And now I would like to bring to you guys a much awaited segment of our Mercatorial podcast to talk some MMA, some sports betting, possibly, and welcome my good buddy to the show. Long awaited MMA for money. Say what's up to the people. They've been waiting a long time.
MMA for money, aka the living legend, aka Mr. Motherfucking Prime Time. What's up, everybody?
Man, it is refreshing to have you on. This is going to be good. I like this. Hopefully, we could do this more often. Get some other people involved, and so we've been talking personally amongst me and you about the relaunch of MMAformoney.com. You got some stuff in the works over there.
Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff going on. Some nice surprises. We're going to relaunch MMAformoney.com probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks. We have some cool promotional stuff that's going to be going on, which will be good. A couple surprises. I don't know if everybody remembered, but the first time when we launched MMAformoney.com, we had some problems with hackers. The scumbags ended up creating 3 million V Bulletin accounts, which ended up flooding the MySQL database and ended
That's
up screwing up
fucking
the whole
right.
site.
I
So
forgot about
after
that.
really close to 5 grand spent and a month of programming the whole thing, I was just so disgusted over that bullshit that we ended up kind of just closing the door and phasing the whole project out. But now is a better time that, I'm looking forward to relaunching and getting things rolling again. And especially since everybody's been asking for a good place to go. There's a couple options right now for MMA and boxing betting, but nothing really, is spectacular in other people's eyes. I don't want to take anything away from, anybody that puts in their hard work and time into, their own projects. But from the people I talk to, there's not that number one go-to site to, get great picks, underdog picks, 10 to 1, 15 to 1. You know how we do it. We hit those big numbers consistently.
Yeah, that's kind of unheard of. You get a lot of people that do these chalk parlays and shoot for a big dog here and there, but it, we've got a lot of good people on the team, and you've got some of your own stuff going on to where you can't focus that much on MMA, and that's probably going to be changing in the future. But what's what's been going on lately has been working big time. Plus 1300s here and a plus 1100. I mean, man, that's kind of stuff is kind of unheard of in
Yep.
MMA, unless you're betting Holly Holm or TJ Dillashaw when they won their titles. You ain't getting that kind of value.
Yep, and we did. We nailed TJ when he fought Henan Barrow. We nailed two 15 to 1 dogs, 2 weeks ago when we hit Neil Magny in the third round. We hit Austin Dillon plus 1500 and Fontana out in Cali in your home state over there. So
Yeah.
I personally don't know anybody who gave out two big 15 to 1 dogs in one day or shit in one week.
Right. That's just amazing. I haven't heard anything like that since maybe a week in tennis that we did about 4 years ago or something like that. I mean,
Yeah,
just
you remember that? That was a good week.
yeah, it's just the kind of shit's unheard of. So
You
that's
know, the
cool.
the
Go,
big problem is that a lot of these kids, on Twitter and on the forums, they want to make a name for themselves. That's their whole thing. They see these touts selling picks, 2.99 a month, 4.99 a month, and they think, "Oh wow, I could live in mommy and daddy's basement and sell picks and become rich." So then they go out there, they create these social media accounts, and they think to themselves, "Oh, I'm going to become a famous celebrity selling my picks." and that's the problem. You don't know who is who. Is this person legit? Is this person full of shit? And that sucks for the person who's looking to make a little extra cash because they're following some idiot who's living in mom and dad's basement. Whereas I've been
Literally.
in the industry since I was 15 years old. It's coming on close to 20 years now. I came up with a lot of good people. One of my mentors was a mover for Billy Walters in Vegas. I spoke to Billy on numerous occasions myself, and a lot of his connections ended up becoming my connections. So, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm not hitting 15 to 1, 20 to 1 dogs this late in my career, this should be the prime of my career. And if I'm not hitting 15 or 20 to 1 dogs, well, it's time to find something else to do. I personally would hang up the proverbial sports betting gloves if I wasn't as successful as I am at doing what I do.
Huh, interesting. And I could say that been watching you now for a long time, and I don't know anybody who hits as consistently as you do, and personally, who doesn't have a real job and still has managed to make his way through life pretty comfortably with a pretty high quality lifestyle that you do. And my hats off to you. I'm happy to know you, and that's all good, man. So let's just my hats off to you. Let's get into some real stuff now. Now that we've got that was a great introduction.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Uh, so let's talk about Kyle Busch,
All
since
right.
since he just since he was a topic today, was the Xfinity race, and this guy won again.
Yep.
I mean,
Four
what?
out of six Xfinity races on the year.
So is this guy is his ego getting a little too big for himself? I mean, should he be driving in the Xfinity races along
See,
with
that's
these
the
other?
big debate, and that's the question NASCAR is asking, the France family, the upper management of NASCAR, the media, fans, and everyone alike. Should these cup drivers be driving in the minor leagues? It would be like taking Clayton Kershaw and throwing him in double A or triple A ball. I mean,
Huh.
would it be cool to see him strike out 27 guys in a row? Yeah, it probably would be pretty entertaining. But after a while, it's going to get old. The guy's a major leaguer for a reason. And that's kind of how I feel about Kyle. He's the Sprint Cup champion, defending Sprint Cup champion. He, rightfully so, deserves to be at NASCAR's top level. And, I understand why he drives an Xfinity. I get it. He wants to go out there and on Friday or Saturday night and he wants to, learn a little more about the track or get reacquainted with the track, whatever you want to say. So I get that. But in the same token, it's not fair because you have all these other kids who, are in their early 20s. They're just starting out their career. Maybe their father was a driver, like, for instance, Chase Elliott. His father was the famous Bill Elliott. He came up through the truck ranks and then Xfinity, and now he's in his rookie season of Sprint Cup. You have Jed Burton, who his father was a famous NASCAR driver. You have quite a few of them whose family was involved in the premier NASCAR series. So I think it kind of hinders their development, in my opinion. Like, for instance, tonight, if Kyle didn't win, Eric Jones would have won. Nice young rookie prospect. He's been in the series a couple of years now. And he would have locked himself into the chase for Xfinity. Now that's another thing. This is the first year that Xfinity has a chase just like Sprint Cup. So
Huh.
you win and you're in. But now tonight, Kyle Busch won. So he basically just hurt his teammate and kept him out of the chase. So these are the questions that, not only is NASCAR front offices, but the media and fans are asking. Is it really fair? Should there be a limit? I'm kind of in the feeling of there should be some kind of limit. Maybe 2 races a year, 3 races a year. Maybe a cup guy has a problem with a track. Maybe he does, poorly at Daytona or Talladega or something like that. So he wants the extra experience. You put him out there and, he works on it on Friday or Saturday night. And then, Sunday comes along and he improves upon his, best finish at that track because he had the extra, wheel time. But to go out there every week and basically beat up on these kids that are trying to learn, I don't know. I feel it really hurts their development.
Huh. So is it ego versus passion, or what's going, what can you boil it down to his intentions? Is he just trying to stomp on these kids, or is it like he's like, oh, there's a race and I need to get out there and just and do my race?
I think part of it is that he's trying to, well, let's start off with saying that he claims that he's doing this to better himself for Sunday's race. That's what his number one defense has been. But, you know, he's doing it on tracks that he performs well at. Not every track, don't get me wrong. I mean, Martinsville, for instance, last week, he never won at Martinsville. Well, he went out in Xfinity on Saturday. He ended up winning. And as you know, on Sunday, he swept the weekend and, won in the Cup Series. So, in his defense, I guess you can say that yes, driving double duty is making him a better driver. So I guess the best answer to that question would be that he's just a perfectionist. And by him going out every weekend and running in the dual series, he feels that he's becoming that much better of a driver.
Well, you're definitely more of an analyst than I am, and I will just say that it's pissing me off, and I think he's an asshole right now. But but we'll leave those kind of comments for me because you dive deep into all of that, and for whatever reason that he is doing it, it's working out for him. He's winning races, and
Yeah, I can see how people think he's an asshole. His temper tantrums, he likes to blame everybody else when he loses, and I can see the knock on his personality. But you can't take away the fact that he's a hell of a race car driver.
yeah, he reminds me of what Harvick was doing like 2 years ago,
Yep,
where it
exactly.
was just like he gets out in front and there he goes.
And if
You
you
know,
remember 2, 3 years ago, now it was a little different because if you remember, Harvick had his own team. So he was going out and doing double duty, trying to get his team off the ground. So that's, a lot different. Kyle, even though Kyle does have his own race team, he's been driving for Gibbs. So, the intentions are a little different. But Harvick was trying to keep sponsors on the car. He was trying to, win money for his team. And, you know, it was a big difference. But even so, after those couple years that Harvick did double duty racing and Xfinity and then Cup, look at how tremendous he did. He ended up winning the championship last year. What did he finish? 15 times in second place out of 36 races or whatever. I mean,
It was
he's been
brutal.
doing phenomenal since.
Right.
So, it definitely does work from improvement perspective, but that it's really not fair to the kids who are trying to come up through the ranks and get to NASCAR's premier series.
Right. Well, I'd be in favor of Harvick going and punching him in the chest like he did Jimmy Johnson last year. That was the greatest video ever. And I'm a Jimmy Johnson fan. I like that dude.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's move on. Let's move on to let's talk some UFC 200. Why don't we? So basically the main event of UFC 200, as we all know now, is Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz #2, which
Yep.
the first fight should probably not have even happened anyways. The reason why the first fight happened was because RDA broke his damn foot, and Nate Diaz steps in a late replacement. All of a sudden, this fight happens, and it's a spectacle, and now it's supposed to be this uber spectacle, which I kind of don't buy. I mean, what do you think would have happened if Conor? Let me give you this scenario.
All right.
Conor McGregor fights RDA. RDA beats him right handedly. Maybe probably a third round mauling. It wouldn't be the same thing as the Nate fight. So say he beats him third round, he finishes him. So now the lightweight moving up to get this lightweight belt does not happen. Do you think that the fight at UFC 200 is more likely to happen between Frankie and Conor at this point, or do you think they go a different route? Because UFC 200, the main event was going to be Conor McGregor, whether he fought, anyone.
Yeah.
So do you think the more likely scenario would have been that he would have fought Frankie for the belt at 200?
That's a tough question, and the reason being is because UFC knew that they had Jose Aldo in the wings, and they knew, even though Aldo isn't maybe the best earner as far as pay-per-view dollars are concerned, they knew that it's UFC 200. It's going to sell no matter what fight, is made on the card. They knew there were a lot of other fights surrounding the main event, on the undercard that were going to draw fans in. But it was another, ex-champion or whatever you want to say, because they're fighting for the interim championship, him and Frankie. So UFC really didn't have any motivation to have Conor fight Frankie. Now, personally, I don't agree with the whole Nate Diaz rematch. I don't think that the results will be much different. I don't understand why they're fighting at 170 pounds again. Both guys have plenty of time to cut weight. They should be fighting at 155 pounds, if anything, in my opinion. Nate is ranked fourth in lightweight. So personally, I don't get this fight. And as far as UFC 200 as a whole, I'm kind of disappointed. As a lifelong UFC fan, I started UFC 1 renting the videos from Blockbuster Video. I mean, that's how far I go back. And, I thought that this event would be more of a wow. And, it does have some big names. And don't get me wrong, I am excited for, some of the fights on there. But I don't know. Maybe it was because I expected it to be a wow, or I'm just not as excited as I thought I would be.
No, it is a disappointment for me, especially UFC 100 was like the biggest thing. It felt like the biggest thing, and after UFC 100 was done, it was like, man, wait until the sport gets to UFC, excuse me, 200, because by that time it's going to, and granted the sport has exploded. It's picked up about as much as we could have expected it to be on Fox now, and FS1 and ESPN's talking about it. Major radio
Yep,
stations are talking about it, which is cool. That's what the smart guys like me and you, predicted, which would happen.
exactly.
Fighting robots on Fox, and but Frankie Edgar
remember,
versus
remember when I had the meeting with Dana White at the event in Jersey, and he was talking about how they signed with FS1, and the breaking news at the time, or well, it didn't even come out, but I told you, oh, when I was with Dana, he was telling me about how they were going to create an app and we're going to be able to watch fights on our phones and our iPads. We were so psyched. We
right,
thought that was the coolest thing ever, that we could be, whether it be at a casino or a barbecue or whatever, and we could watch fights on our phone and our tablet. And that wasn't that long ago. If you remember, what was that, 4 or 5 years ago? And
right,
now it's like, we're on mainstream television.
right. Yeah, and I remember even before that, it was a fight in Jersey. Joe Lozon won a winning bonus. I can't really remember that, but I'm sure he did. Uh, I remember me and you having conversations before that even happened about like me being on the road, and man, I wish I could just I wish I could just watch this shit on my phone. It was like a event that I had to miss for some reason, and I'm like, I got my phone with me. Like, why can't I just watch it on my phone? And then, sure enough, it was like you had that conversation with them, and within about it took about 6 months. Then Fight Pass launched. It was kind of shitty at first, but for the amount of content you get on Fight Pass, $10 a month for someone like me or you is not bad. Unless
Yeah,
you
it's really not. And
right,
as it grows, it'll become like kind of like a WWE network, where it has a lot of historical content, and UFC is a little newer than WWE, obviously, so they don't have as big of a historical tape library, but it's getting there. Give it another 10, 15 years, and it's really going to be awesome compared to, how it is now.
right.
And
I wonder if they do away with pay per view altogether somehow, and they just run everything through Fight Pass. That would be cool, because sometimes you're not in an area where you're able to purchase a pay per view.
well,
And
that's the
and
talk.
the
But if you
streaming.
noticed for this weekend for WWE, even though WrestleMania was on WWE Network, you pay the $9.99 and whatever, and have the subscription monthly and get WrestleMania for free. But if you wanted it on your television, you had to pay $64.99 for the pay per view, just like old times. There was no way. WWE Network is just like Fight Pass. There's no way for you to get it through your cable subscriber, other than, how I did it, obviously, is through my Chromecast. I ended up pulling the WWE Network up on my computer, and I ended up streaming it through Chromecast, and, that's how I watched WrestleMania. Was it as clear as HD pay per view? No. Did it lag a little bit? Every once in a while, it had a little lag. But was it worth saving the $55? In my opinion, yeah. But then again, for UFC 200, would I rather see it in crystal clear? I probably would. You know, so that's the problem in my eyes with taking it off of pay per view. I like the whole subscription based content, online. I think that's great. I think it's great to have these historical tape libraries. It makes it a lot easier for handicappers like us. I mean, I have a hard drive full of tapes, and it gets crazy after a while, especially downloading all the events and archiving them, and
You've had that forever. You were the Fight Pass before Fight Pass was actually Fight Pass.
right? It's the truth, but it got tiring. You'd have to save all this space and download everything, and now it's a lot easier. Let's put it that way. But my whole thing is just how are they gonna keep up with the high definition? How are they going to prevent the lag? And I guess as time goes on, our internet providers will get better. And in a perfect world, instead of 50 over 50, we'll have something comparable to T1 or T3 lines in our homes. But as of now, it seems like the cable providers or internet providers, fiber optic, whatever you want to say, are a little behind these media providers.
Right. And yeah, I totally agree. And they're going to have to do something about the streaming because if it's not a huge two title fight, UFC or a UFC 200, I'm not interested in paying the money for it. To be quite
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, because
Yeah.
a lot of the pay per views are dog shit.
And that's coming from a die-hard MMA fan who's been watching since he's 10 years old?
Yeah, and
So,
the same thing as you. Me and my buddy Sean, he's probably listening to this right now. We would go down to Blockbuster and pick out the early UFC VHS tapes, and then bring them home and watch them. And then as you know, the story with my older brother Damon started training jujitsu, and I was watching it before. It just wasn't, the whole horse Hoist Gracie. We don't need to go into that.
yeah.
Smaller guy versus bigger guy. But anyways, let's rewind back to our initial topic. Two questions for you right now. What could the UFC have done differently to make UFC 200 better? And two part, what do you think could be on the horizon? Do you think Robbie Lawler's going to fight somebody, or let's speculate a little bit?
All right. Well, I think part of it would have been instead of, and it's tough to say because you have to have big fights to sell pay per views, like we just talked about. But you kind of had to, in my opinion, in order to do UFC 200 correctly, or however you want to phrase it, you kind of had to sacrifice the earlier events, the UFC 199, 198, 197. I think they tried too hard to keep, I don't want to say equal because it's not really equal, but they tried to
Build some
make
momentum.
everybody happy with keeping big fights on 197, 198, 199. Like
Yeah.
I know Cormier pulled out, but John Jones versus Daniel Cormier should have been on UFC 200. I don't want to hear about it, being on an earlier pay per view. That should have been a UFC 200 fight right there. I would have tried to stack every big fight that I possibly could in a 3-6 month period on UFC 200. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she should be fighting on UFC 200. That is one of the most impressive women's fighters out there, in my opinion. And instead, they have her doing tough, the Ultimate Fighter. So I feel like they didn't handle their resources properly. They have these big name fighters, they have the capabilities to have a gigantic, huge card to celebrate UFC 200, to open the new arena in Las Vegas that's, been under construction for the past 18 months or however long. Not only is it a milestone event for UFC, but it's a big event for Las Vegas. And I think UFC dropped the ball a little bit. I hate to say it. They do have big names on their card, but like we said earlier, it's a little disappointing.
Right. And I think I think the UFC took a couple gambles that didn't work out for him. And
Ronda Rousey.
As much as Dana White likes to say, you never know what's going to happen in this fight game.
Yep.
They took gambles with Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, and Paige
Holly
Van
Holm.
Zandt. And exactly. And
Yep.
and after Holly Holm beat Ronda, Holly Holm was like, "Oh, this new preacher's daughter, new face, how humble she is, how cool." And she's just gonna, she's the new face of the women's division. Ronda's doing movies. Well, now she's gone, and me and you are both big fans of Tate, and we appreciate her. But I hate to like draw a blanket over the casual fan, but like they took some gambles and it didn't quite work out for them. That's why, like you said before, they used their stars on previous UFCs leading up to this, which there were not a lot of pay-per-views from last summer to now. From last summer to this summer, there wasn't a lot of pay-per-views. There's been a lot of free cards, a lot of FS1 cards, and they've been putting their superstars on these fights where they're supposed to win and they don't win. And that's the MMA sport for you. As much as, like I said before, Dana White likes to pretend that he's prepared for these situations. I don't think they were prepared for the fall that has happened.
No, and did you hear about the fight between Dana and Holly Holm's manager? Supposedly there was this conversation or meeting between the two, and he said that Holly's manager is an old boxing guy and he doesn't understand how MMA worked, and Holly should have waited for Ronda, and this boxing manager was the one that pushed Holly in the direction to fight Misha, and that Holly didn't even show up at the contract signing, that just the manager did. And apparently, according to Holly, she disagreed with that and said that she's a fighter's fighter and she doesn't turn down fights, and it had nothing to do with him. She's the one that called the shots. But I guess Dana felt even so that the manager should have put his foot down and been a manager and said, you shouldn't risk your stardom or your championship or whatever you want to say against such a dangerous opponent before you fight Ronda Rousey in what would be a big payday.
Yeah. One person that feels left out is Holly Holm right now, and
yeah,
it's like where's she at? You got these two high profile, well, three actually, now that they've signed Cyborg, and maybe we can get into that on another one. But two high profile women fight at UFC 200, and it's just, where's Holly? Where's Ronda? The star power's gone. Let's move on a little bit. This is obviously going to be a hot topic coming for weeks forward if we do these MMA segments. So, talk about star power. Mr. John Jones seems like the only one. Only star left right now.
Yeah, but how good is that really? As far as his history is concerned, with getting arrested and getting in trouble, and just like Ronda dropped the title in a heartbeat, and just like Holly was, yesterday's news with the quickness. Well, as far as we know, John Jones can go out tonight, do a little blow, and get popped. And look at last week. This guy's got a big fight coming up. Who he thinks is Daniel Cormier, and somebody that he has bad blood between. And what's John doing? He's out there in New Mexico driving like an idiot and getting pulled over. So,
Is he the Mike Tyson of our era?
in a way, yeah, I think so.
Without knocking mofos out. I mean, he is as dominant. He's young. He likes cocaine. I mean, it's just all signs point to, and as talented as he is, without knocking people out and finishing them, and honestly, I think he was showing up hungover for a lot of those fights, especially versus Alexander Gustafsson. He had puffy eyes before he even started fighting, and he almost lost. But I actually scored the fight for Alex. But I mean, goddamn, to be that talented and to keep defending your belt, to have it taken from you because of the decisions that you made outside of the octagon, it seems so Mike Tyson-esque.
Yeah, like we talked about before, Tyson, when he went into the Buster Douglas fight, he got caught. I wouldn't say that was the end of his career or the decline of his career, but that was, Tyson was too concerned at that time with, being Mr. Celebrity, being out in Hollywood, fucking models, that was more important to Tyson at the time than being a pro fighter. And it showed in that fight. He got caught and he lost. You know, then he went on to a pretty good career before going against Evander Holyfield and getting exposed for what he was, a declining fighter at the time. And, that a big part of that was Cus D'Amato passing away. When Cus got up there in age, Tyson was lost. He was nowhere near the same fighter that he was when Cus was in his corner. And a big part of that was that Cus was a father to him. He legally adopted Mike. So, for anybody who, grew up without parents or, even some people like us who, want to make our parents proud, that's how Mike was. He had this old man who basically gave up everything for him. And Cuss loved boxing. Truly, truly, truly loved boxing. It was his life. So when Mike won, he was the most ecstatic guy in the whole building. And it showed. And Mike knew it. So Mike tried everything in his power to impress Cuss. And, after so long, it gets tiring. The stress builds up on you. From working with Dad all those years. There's only so much you can do before it's, Pops, what the fuck you want me to do? Stand on my head for you?
Right.
As a human being, there's only so much that one person can do before it catches up with you. And I think that's what started to happen in the Buster Douglas fight, was that the stress caught up with him and he was looking at an outlet. And that outlet was, getting laid and doing drugs. And the same can be said for John Jones. He came up very early. He was, 23 years old when he won his title for the first time, something like that. He shot to the top quickly. And it went to his head. He's in
Yeah, I remember we got a good price on John Jones when he fought Shogun. At the time, Shogun was my favorite fighter, and at the fight, how I mean, it wasn't exactly Pacquiao versus Mayweather in their prime, but Shogun versus Rashad at that time was the fight I wanted to see because we all knew that John Jones was going to be champion someday. I wanted to see Shogun versus Rashad when they're both at the top of their game, and
yes,
and that I think that was the start of the injury bug. We could go through the timeline. We don't have time for that tonight, but
yeah.
God
Yeah,
damn
I
it, the
got cut
injury.
off with a phone call. That's why I hesitated there for a minute. I didn't know if we got disconnected, but
No, we're good. We're good, homie. I'm here to pick up the slack wherever there's slack to be picked
there we
up.
go. Teamwork, brother,
Yeah, MMA for money team. That's how
all
we
day.
roll. Ha ha ha! God damn it.
Speaking of fucking Pop Dukes, there he is, fucking bothering me like always. What else is new?
Hey, hey. We love Pop Dukes.
Yeah.
It's all love. So you know what? Let's put all that other stuff aside. Let's get into what these people really want. These people want to make some money. They want to hear what smart people have to say about the fights, which is not me, and that's where we defer to people like you. I'm
Oh,
just
I wouldn't say that. You've come a long way, brother. You definitely have.
I'm blushing. No, I'm just been drinking a little bit. That's so we've got Timothy Bradley versus Pacquiao tomorrow. We've also got UFC show Sunday afternoon. So let's start off the boxing match coming up because in my opinion, Bradley is really hard to finish. And even though you're getting Pacquiao at a under minus 200 at the current position in most books,
hmm
Pacquiao by decision line is right now. What do you think about it? While I look up the line,
Well, right now, the last time I looked, Pacquiao was a minus 190 favorite. Um, it's going to be a tough fight. You know, what people don't realize, and funny thing is, we were just talking about Customato and Mike Tyson. Well, Teddy Atlas is in Timothy Bradley's corner. So that should definitely have an impact of some kind, you know. Teddy Atlas was another guy whose career was made by Customato up in the Catskills. You know, he was trying to be a fighter at the time, and he ended up getting injured, and he was kind of small in size for being a fighter and had a short reach. And instead, Cuss ended up making him an assistant trainer, and he helped train Mike Tyson for a short period of time. Ultimately, they ended up having a falling out, and Teddy Atlas put a gun to Mike Tyson's head after Tyson slapped the rear end of an 11-year-old family member of Teddy Atlas. Tyson was 16 at the time. And, you know, like we said, Tyson was Cuss's son. You know, he truly looked at him as his son, and legally he was. So Cuss told Teddy that he wasn't welcome anymore up in the Catskills. Later on, Teddy Atlas went and became Michael Moore's trainer and led Michael Moore to the heavyweight title. He ended up beating Evander Holyfield. So, you know, Teddy Atlas has been around the block and has been in boxing since the late 70s, early 80s. He's, you know, I don't want to say as skilled as a Freddie Roach, but he's been around the block. Um, and I kind of think that's what Timothy Bradley needs right now. He needs a guy who's not going to take any shit, and he's going to put Bradley in his place. You know, Teddy Atlas has over 200 or 400 stitches on his face from fighting in Staten Island as a kid. I mean, Teddy Atlas is no joke. He was a tough kid growing up.
dear
And, you
Lord.
know, Bradley has been surrounded by yes men, in my opinion. You know, he's another one like Broner. You know, Broner's another fighter who's too cocky for his own good. Um, so that should have a big effect on this fight. The only difference I see as far as this third fight is concerned compared to the past one is if Bradley ends up fighting the same way that he did against Brandon Rios, Pacquiao doesn't have a chance, you know. But the problem is that Bradley has the length, so he's not going to stick and move as much as somebody like Mayweather. Mayweather got on his bicycle and he was hard to hit. He came up with the blueprint, in my opinion, to dominate Pacquiao.
Huh.
Um, Bradley's going to try and obviously follow in those footsteps, but because he is a little longer and he won't be on his bicycle as much, he's going to be easier to hit. Also, the other thing is that Tim's a few inches shorter than Floyd with a shorter reach. So he doesn't have the luxury of being a fighter with long arms. And unlike Floyd, Tim is a southpaw like Manny. So, all in all, it's not as easy to say that Bradley's just going to walk in there and, follow Floyd's blueprint to a big victory. I do think that the fight will be a lot closer than the last one that Pacquiao won. I think Pacquiao should have won the first fight. I think he got robbed, and I'm sure you remember that fight very well. We
Oh
won't go into
Lord.
details on
Oh,
why, but
oh
I'm
Lord.
sure you remember that fight very well.
Yeah, I went way too big on it, and I was got overzealous and confident, which is we learn these lessons throughout our
Yeah, that's
career.
life. I don't think there's a professional gambler out there who says that they haven't got taken one in the ass every once in a while. It's how it goes. But
And then when he got knocked out by Marquez, the same thing. You're like, well, I had a feeling that both fights. I was like, wow, I really went big on this one. I hope it comes through. You're like, well, I wouldn't have told you to do that. I'm
yeah.
like, God damn it.
Yeah, that was one of the few times that we didn't talk before the fight. You were busy or whatever happened, and when you told me, I was like, "Oh no, did you do
I did it.
that?"
You
But
know,
yeah, it should be a lot closer. You know, I, I don't I don't know if I would tell people as of right now at the price that they're getting and the 165 plus 165 on Bradley, if it's enough for me to jump in. He is the younger fighter. He's just not the smarter fighter. So as of this price right now, I'd probably pass. I'm not going to tell people to go and lay 2-1 on an aging Pacquiao. But depending on what happens tomorrow, if we get Pacquiao in the 150s, 140s range, he might be worth a play. Then again, if Bradley comes up to the 2-1, 220 range, he would be worth a play, in my opinion. I think odds makers have it kind of right where it is right now.
well, cool. That I think that's going to help a lot of people out, and be on the lookout for MMA for money.com on Twitter. I'm sure you're going to post something.
Yep, we will have plays all day tomorrow. We have not only the fight, we have the big race, the cup race in Texas tomorrow, which should be big. It's a night race. So everybody knows for whatever reason, I end up doing much better on the night races. I don't know why, but those down south Saturday night shootouts we've had plenty of success with over the years. We have the UFC event coming up this weekend. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to bet on, and we should do very well.
Hey, Saturday night, Mr. Prime Time. I think that goes pretty hand in hand right there,
Yep.
right? Excuse me. So, all right, I guess we do have two bets for the UFC that are standing out in our eyes right now.
Hmm.
What are you thinking about that? What do you think? You think Ben Rothwell's shot? You think Gabriel Gonzaga's shot? What do you got going on for us?
Yeah, I talked to my buddy who is a professional sports bettor down in Peru. His name is Mr. Uspime or Uspaim, however you want to pronounce it. Whose new name is the MMA Gangster.
Boom.
And he did quite a few hours of tape study for us. So he really thinks Gonzaga's done, and I'm in agreement with him. I liked Gonzaga 3-4 fights ago. I told you to bet on him, and you, I think you thought he was done a little sooner than we did at the
Correct.
time.
Correct.
Um, but now I think is the time where you're going to see that decline. Um, as far as Mr. MMA Gangster said, um, he likes Lewis a lot over Gonzaga. He thinks that it's going to be a late stoppage. He believes that Gonzaga is no longer a submission threat, but rather just a layer and prayer at this time in his career. He should look to push Lewis against the fence and grind him out. The problem is he'll probably run out of gas very quickly, which I agree with, especially against a guy as big as Lewis. He's going to take Lewis minus 140 on the money line and Lewis in round 3 at 10-1. The other straight bet that he likes is Pjich plus 115. He thinks that everybody's overlooking the kid. He's kind of like a poor man's Conor McGregor, slower with less power, but he does have a bit more grappling. He thinks that he's going to finish the undersized Stasiak or gets a robbery decision in his hometown as a grab. We've talked about that numerous times over the years. When UFC goes into these foreign countries like Croatia or Russia or, Asia, one of the Asian countries, you know, the judges tend to side with the hometown fighter. And, I don't want to say that it's directly cheating because it's not cheating so much, but the crowd gets in their head. It maybe
Exactly.
it's a soft jab, but the opponent's head snaps back and the crowd goes crazy thinking it's a big shot, and it'll score bigger for the hometown fighter as opposed to the visiting fighter who not only has the problems of his cut to deal with, who not only has the problems of the travel to deal with and getting accustomed and everything else, but then he basically gets no emotional response from the crowd, which hurts his case as far as the judges. Now you're taught to block that all out, but that's kind of hard to do. It's all part of the three senses. You see with your eyes, you hear with your ears, you smell with your nose. It's you can almost taste it. But that's kind of how it goes. So I think he's kind of spot on with that bet. And the third one that he likes is Perez in round 3 at plus 1300. He thinks that Toquinho and Twistle will guess if he doesn't get the early finish. Plus, he's coming off a couple injuries. Perez is not exactly a killer, but he's got quite a bit of power, and you don't need much against a gassed opponent. He did like the Blades bet a little bit. It was going to be a potential bet in his eyes, but the line fell from minus 140 to plus 120, which is kind of crazy. Whiteford training at ATT also scared him off a bet on Martins. So there should be some nice plays right there. You got a nice plus 1300, 13-1 bet. You got a 10-1 bet, and you got a nice small money line at 140. So all in all, it should be a nice early morning card of action. Hopefully, we'll hit a 10-1 or a 13-1 play before the afternoon begins.
Hey, wouldn't that be great?
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Still, even at this point in my career, almost 20 years later, I still get excited when I hit the big 15, 20-1. I don't care where I am. I'll be Westgate, and you'll hear "yeah," and you know that MMA for money just hit a big one because uh, you know, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, we hit enough of them. But when you hit those 15, 20 to ones, it's hard not to get excited.
Man, wrecking books and cashing tickets.
Yep, taking names, brother.
Right on. Well, hey, man, it's been great talking with you. I think we covered a lot of ground here, and let's do it again soon.
Yeah, it's been a good time, brother. Anytime you want me back, I'll be here.
All right on, man.
All
Well,
right, take care, everybody.
yeah, we are out.